Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're really excited to have you joining us this morning on what looks to be a very beautiful day.
The
sun is just coming out, and it's just that hint of spring warmth.
Feels like spring. It does.
It's beginning to feel like spring.
I know it's still early March, and anything can happen, but it feels good.
And you have that little chill in the morning, right? But then you can kind of sense it from the sun. That it's going to warm up as the day goes on. It gives you energy. You wake up.
It warms up the bones, and I tell you,
it does.
At this age, warming up the bones is a blessing thing.
It means a lot.
Yes.
Was it with you and Keith when one of you said when you're above the ground, it's good morning?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Good morning for
Absolutely.
you, David. It's a fantastic morning here at Charlottesville. We're really excited about today's show. We're going to have on Sara Bon-Harper. She's the executive director of James Monroe's Highland, as well as later in the show, Jeff Kamrath, the owner of Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash. So got a lot in store today. As always, we're just thrilled to be here on the I Love CVille Network set.
I'm very excited.
We really appreciate our partners at Castle Hill Cidery, a beautiful spot to head out. I think I saw on Facebook that up at Castle Hill, they're starting to get the blooms. So some of the bulbs and the flowers are opening up. They're sensing that warmth.
Keep our fingers crossed that there's no frost on the way, because, like I said, it's still early March.
I know you got to watch out with the frost, but you can. It's then that time where you don't really want to go up there and enjoy that beautiful space they have. Of course, we're partnered with Sirius Craddock Insurance, our friend Miguel, the Gym CVille, which I think is having their own March Madness deal.
Oh, really? Okay.
So if you're ready to really, as Justin put it, mind, body, and spirit.
There you are.
You can head out to the Gym CVille. That's a great place to be. Of course, Vitae Spirits, new spring menu. I'm sure actually he's still in the winter menu, but hopefully thinking of spring coming.
Good place to go right after the gym.
Good place to go right after the gym. Or before. I mean, if you really need to work up your courage. And of course, GBS Financial Services, our friend Johan Torres, and Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash,
which we have here today.
And of course, we are always partnering with Adelante, the premier Latino networking group here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So, to start off with, I know you have an announcement.
Yes. Well, yeah, Anna Pachias, and Anna, if I mispronounce your last name, I pronounce things the way I read them because I'm Spanish, so it sounds like Pachias. But, so she is the director of annual giving, and the Banff Mountain Festival is taking place on Monday, March 7th, so it's next Monday, in Charlottesville at the Paramount Theater. And the Shenandoah National Park Trust received a donation from a board member, and they'd like to invite the Latino community to attend this particular film festival. And there will be, so apparently there are free tickets. So if you are a Latino and would like to go to the Banff
National Park.
Banff Mountain Film Festival on Monday, March 7th at the Paramount Theater. There is a link, and I know that Nicholas will be putting that link on, on Today Mañana?
On all the feeds.
On all the feeds.
So on Facebook.
So you can't miss it.
Instagram,
so you can't miss
it. Nick will put in there in the comment section, you'll be able to click the link.
I'm sorry,
to the Eventbrite page.
To Eventbrite page, and that's where I suspect you'll be able to get your tickets. So thank you, Anna, for providing this information to us, and hopefully, there are folks out there that can enjoy this.
Absolutely, no, and it sounds like a good opportunity. As someone who loves national parks, a great opportunity.
Well, it's a film festival, so it's an international film festival, and
based out of a national park in the Shenandoah National Park.
That's right. Yeah.
Helping to get some of our Latino community members out there to just enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Enjoy it.
So that would be great.
And have that experience. So that's fantastic. Really appreciate her reaching out to us.
That's what I.
From Shenandoah National Park. So I know later in the show we'll have our financial segment towards the end, but I say we just get going. I'm very excited, so I kind of jump right into our first guest here.
Absolutely.
So we're really thrilled to welcome to the show Sara Bon-Harper. She is the executive director of James Monroe's Highland. Sara, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Sara.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
For those, I've been recently, I took my girlfriend to James Monroe's Highland, and we just loved it. It was still, I think it was 2 weeks or so after our big snowstorm, so you still had that beautiful snow on the ground that you could see in the distance, and we drove up and you could see all the trees that line the drive as you come up, and just great experience there. So I've been really looking forward to this ever since Nick set this up. And so first thing we always like to ask our guests to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be with James Monroe's Highland.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you. As far as my background, I'm an archaeologist, and so you can see where the discoveries came from that we eventually revealed. And I was at Monticello for a long time with the great archaeology research program that they have. And then when this position came open, I thought, wow, what a better way to combine things that I really like, that is the research, the discovering new knowledge, and then sharing that with the public. The idea that we can talk to professional audiences and we can also talk to public audiences about the same information and make it interesting and really show people the excitement that we as researchers have for new knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yes, I still remember. So I think it was a few years ago that we went during the Christmas season. Obviously, this is before 2019. Obviously, during the Christmas, where they give you the candles and you walk around the house, and they were already doing the archaeological study. And so we were back then just saying, I wonder what they're digging up. I mean, what is it? So it's interesting to find out a little bit more about what happened. How did it all turn out?
Exactly. I mean, I'd love to hear about that story because obviously, people in this area. I remember the news in 2016 was like, wait, the house I saw is in James Monroe's house. But when I went there recently and learned the story, it's just such a fascinating story. And maybe you tell our audience a little bit about how that came about and what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start with the end, right, which is what we know now, is that standing house, which for so long, decades, even more than a century, people thought was a remnant wing of Monroe's main house. That part of the house had burned and part was still standing. And they identified that standing house as that remnant. It turns out that is a guest house that Monroe had built during his presidency. And it was built by two enslaved men that we figured out the names are Peter Mallory and George Williams. And so these men, with their carpentry skills, built the little house that we have there. And so the other thing we figured out was that the remains of the main house are right there in front of that later building in what we think of as the front yard of that 1870s house. And they're archaeological remains, and they are right there, and they're beautifully preserved. And so we did this sort of as one whole set of research. We did architectural history and archaeology, and then dendrochronology, or tree ring dating.
Wow.
So that's how we put it all together. We found the remains. We figured out that the standing house wasn't quite right for 1799, and then we pulled some tree ring samples to determine for sure that was that 1818 house that matched up with the 1818 letter that talked about these two men building a new house.
Wow.
That's just, I mean, it's amazing. Just quick shout out, there's some folks watching the show already. Robert Boland watching the show, Quentin Bettram watching the show, Elizabeth Miller watching us today. Thanks everyone for watching this morning. And so, I mean, just what fascinates me is the idea, because I think sometimes in our modern age, we tend to think of history as something that's set in stone. It's like, okay, what we know, and that's it. But the idea that a piece of knowledge, this important, in other words,
That's
this
right.
is the fifth president, yes,
that's
fifth
right.
president of the United States, that for 100 years, we could think that there had been a whole public consciousnness that a part of his house had survived, and that piece of history was just lost and then rediscovered all this time later. Just fascinates me. I'm curious what hints there were to even led you to begin this search. I mean, what sort of led James Monroe's Highland to say, wait a second, we should look into this? Was it a discovery or just suspicions that the house that's currently there might not be the one?
It was a suspicion, and I'll say I wasn't really the first person to say, hey, that looks a little funny, and to sort of figure out what the story was. And people had sort of raised questions about that, even when William and Mary inherited the property in 1974. Immediately people said, that has nothing to do with Monroe. And so they did some research that actually turns out falsely verified it as Monroe's house, but they questioned it. Others have questioned it. And so when I got there, though, I was in a position, both as a researcher and executive director, to be able to say, all right, let's make sure that the story we're telling is real. And I think there had been probably some interest in preserving a Monroe story, and there had been certainly a worry that if we found out it wasn't Monroe's, what would that be? But for me, and fortunately for the group of advisors that I had and for the administration at William & Mary who owned it, the idea was, well, if we have suspicions about the truth, we better investigate them and make sure what we're saying is real. And to me, that's just as interesting as a story, if not more interesting, than saying, this is part of a mansion, whatever, and it could not be true. But the story of the discovery, just like you were saying, I think is so important. I remember when I was a little kid saying to my mom, if I lived a long time ago, I would have to memorize less history. I wasn't exactly the biggest history fan, but I've always been really interested in figuring out more, right? Not the fan of that memorizing, but the fan of learning, right? And there's a difference there. And so what we're trying to share at Highland is that learning, that discovery, not the memorizing of right. It's set in stone, but the idea that each generation can ask new questions about history, and our perspectives, our backgrounds, the questions we choose, all come to play in what we find out and the stories that we can tell. And so that's really what we're doing now, is we're interpreting the site correctly in terms of the physical understanding, and we're also making sure that we ask different questions and that we bring the right people to the table.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, and even though my suspicion is, even though the architectural part of it is laborious, right? So, I mean, the digging part, I would assume that technology helps enormously, today's technology helps enormously to try to figure out when that piece of stone that you find or piece of wood you find, how old it is, and things of that sort. Is that true?
Somewhat. There's certainly some technological pieces, but I think like any field, our knowledge grows, and the references that we have can build, and so we are more precise with our interpretations than we would have been a generation or two ago.
Gotcha.
So our excavation probably is less technologically advanced compared to other parts. It's still,
right.
out there moving some dirt and
little brushes, making sure.
But that incremental learning, that if I do just a little more, we'll learn a little more, we'll find some answers. That's always been an appeal, and I think we have a long time left to excavate the remains of that main house, and I hope to be doing it for quite some time. There in the public, talking with people as we make discoveries, and having people join in that process.
That's got to be the exciting part, right? When you keep digging, and you find something.
And you find new things, and you gain new knowledge that you didn't know was there before, which must be so thrilling. But I mean, one of the amazing things when I went is that despite the fact that, okay, it's not the house he lived in, is just the sheer breadth of the collection. Because every room I was going is that this, and I would be like, oh, is this like a desk from his period? And the docent there said, no, that's his desk. And I said,
so I guess, what was inside didn't burn? I mean, so.
Right. Yeah. So Monroe sold the core of the property in 1826, and then the fields, the remaining part, in 1828. So he was not the owner of the house when it burned.
Okay.
So he and his possessions had moved out. Many of the possessions were passed down in the family. Our friends at the James Monroe Museum in Fredericksburg have lent us some great items that are part of what you saw when you visited. And yes, a really large proportion of what we display now in the guest house are objects from Monroe's family, from his own collection. And
That's
so
great.
Right now we display those, the two rooms that he had built by Peter and George, these unfree carpenters who did the work. We have those two rooms displayed as guest rooms, depicting parts of the guest experience and the occupation of the plantation, including the presence of enslaved people, even while the Monroes were not there, and how their role was central to the running of the property and really the essence of the property. And then the other rooms as gallery spaces and vignettes showing parts of Monroe's life and his career, and actually the people and events of Highland that really illustrate parts of American history in a way that only a specific place and specific people can do.
Just no, it's amazing, and but I think also what fascinated me is because of the fact that Monroe, I think he took 2 trips to Europe. There are so many connections also to like world history. Sometimes we think of him, okay, he's an American president, he deals with American history, but he had, like, as people, just obviously as immigrants ourselves, we come from sort of Italy and Cuba and Spain. We can make those connections as well, Tim, because I'd sit there and say, wait, this statue is from Venezuela that was given here, or this was from his trip, the Dosen was done, this was from his trip to France, and Napoleon sent him this bust because Napoleon sent a bust to everyone who went to his coronation.
Kind of like his calling card.
I was like, that's the best party favor ever. Imagine you did a giant marble bust of the guy because he went to
It's in my carry-on, you know.
Just take this home with you. It's a bust of me. Congratulations. And just the amazing ways in which we can be connected to world history through this place.
Exactly, and Monroe really is about geopolitics. His career really can be framed by that sense of the expansion of the United States' relationship with other nations. That was really how we can see his most significant aspects of his career.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm curious, as the archaeology is ongoing and the interpretation is ongoing, what are some new things that have come into, that can be on display there, or things that are upcoming that people should sort of be in mind and say, okay, here's what excites you and what's
Yeah,
coming
well,
down
the
pipeline?
biggest thing, of course, is that we've just completed these new exhibitions on the inside of the standing guest house, and really the first major revision in, I don't know, as long as I know Highland, certainly. And these are also with bilingual panels, I should mention. We really are trying to say to people, this history is for all of us. And we're looking forward to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and really thinking about what it means to be Americans, to be here. And we're hoping that what we are doing now and what we're planning in the next few years really brings that to bear, saying, all right, what happened here is part of what made us who we are today as a people.
Exactly.
And so we're trying to enter that conversation with what we're doing now. And we're planning the next phase of exhibitions and programming, which will include all the other site spaces all around. So those rooms underneath, those are coming. The reconstructed quarters, for example, those will be reinterpreted to share new stories, to bring people further into our process of discovery.
So in a way, this was a great blessing, right? Because it really
Those blessings in disguise.
right, because it makes you want to go back, because so many things are changing, right? And so many new discoveries are occurring that you say, I have to go back. As opposed to you go someplace like I've seen it done, right? And here's someplace where it's now history is being really discovered as time goes by.
Right, certainly. When I took the job, I said to the group that hired me, I said, I hope that when people visit, they will always be saying, hearing a guide say, oh, the experts just told us, or we just discovered that, and that the narratives would be changing. I had no idea they would be changing that much. I mean, that was not on the table, but that's where it took us, and that's what it is. So yes, very much. Last summer we were able to have a public archaeology season where we were out there. A group of William and Mary students and a couple others came and worked with me in the field, and were able to talk to people about the process of discovery and how we're doing. And so we will do that again in future seasons. We don't have a season planned for this summer, but we will raise funding again to do that once more.
That's terrific.
That is fantastic. I know, there's so many, and I think one of the things I learned is there are so many things to experience on the grounds beyond even just the house and the new exhibits. Because I had no idea there were, until I went there, that the gentleman in the visitor center was saying, yes, there's trails. You can see he was telling us about the trees that line the driveway. He was telling us about the massive
oak tree
that's, I think he said predates
Monroe.
even Monroe's
Wow. That's
right.
time.
Yeah.
There. So there's just so much. What are some other things that on the grounds itself and the vast area that people can experience there?
Yeah, I think even just a visit to the outdoors is inspiring at Highland. It is a beautiful property. It's still very rural. It's still a farm. And so it does have that beautiful, iconic alley of ash trees that we're treating every other year against the ash borer, and so we're babying them and really taking care of them. The old oak tree, which is really a notable tree in Virginia, and the hemlock that stands next to it.
Yes.
I think those two are the really old trees on the property. And then, of course, you mentioned our trails, 7 miles or so of rustic trails. Really just a gorgeous
Price of
opportunity.
being downtown sometimes.
We hope everything's okay. An opportunity to really explore, to be out there with nature. We've just completed one phase of a conservation project, which was a stream bank repair project with cattle management. This is all grant funded with partners, where invasive species were removed of sort of the greenbrier, the privet, the bittersweet, and then native species planted with shrubs and trees that are native to this area. And so that will have long-term ecological impact, and you can see some of that when you're on the trails too.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what also fascinates me is how much goes into the upkeep of a beautiful and historic space like this. I mean,
Yeah.
you think your first inclination is you think about how you have to take care of the house, the human structures, the structures built by man. But then you sit there and say, no, there's a lot that goes into the rest of the grounds.
Yeah, I was out yesterday with one of our really, really amazing volunteers who has done so much to contribute to not just the upkeep of the trails, but to their betterment. He has rerouted, he's added, he's just done incredible work. And I said, it really feels good to be thinking that we're leaving this place better than we found it, with the native species installation and these trails that just invite people to explore and really see a part of the countryside that should be inspiring.
Oh,
It's got to be gorgeous, yeah.
It is.
Now, can you walk through there without literally going into the house, or?
Yes, definitely. The trails are free and
Okay.
they're open during our operating hours. And the property itself, the historic area is a ticketed area. You can buy your tickets online in advance, or you can show up and buy a ticket. There's also a family grounds access pass, really intended for people with small children to come out and say hi to the sheep and the donkeys and the chickens and whatnot, and just play in the area that is so inviting.
That's wonderful. That's
For
fabulous.
the record, you don't have to be a kid to. I went and said hello to the sheep and the donkeys.
Yeah.
And I said, the moment he said the gentleman in the visitor center said there were animals, I said I need to go see. I need to go see these animals and say hello to them, which I also love. Just it gives you a little bit of the sense that even in Monroe's time, of course, it's not like he just lived in a house.
Right.
And nothing else happened around him. It was a working
It was
farm.
farm.
There was a
Right.
whole
Exactly.
life. And I think you can talk about this for just a brief moment here. Just there's those three also places on the property that tell a little bit of the story of just the enslaved people that were just. I mean, there were so many human stories involved
Right.
here beyond even just the man who owned the house.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and this is one of the benefits of not focusing on a main house or a mansion, is that all of these stories are the story of Highland. And yes, there's a reconstructed quarter, new exhibits coming within the next couple of years, but the stories of Highland really are of all the people, and Monroe, owned and maintained the property as an agricultural plantation. It was his economic enterprise. It wasn't a family seat or anything. He was there most consistently of all the properties he owned. This was his most consistent home for decades. So it really did belong to him, it meant something to him, but it wasn't sort of a country retreat or anything. It was a working plantation in a place that was meant to sustain him financially. And so we don't forget that, and in our interpretation, you talk about the presence of slavery throughout all of the events of Highland. We talk about the economic enterprise, the farming, the industry that occurred there. And our work on this is advised by a council of descendants whose ancestors were at Highland either enslaved or after slavery. And their perspectives now help us to make sure that we're telling a full and authentic story. And this is Highland, the full Highland, and this would not have happened if we hadn't started with that real emphasis on truth and being committed to finding out the real history of the buildings, and that is what let everything else spring into action.
It's amazing.
Great story.
It's history in action and happening.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right before your eyes. I love it. Sarah, this has been such a pleasure. Before I let you go, where can people reach out to Highland, either online, get tickets? Where can people find you?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you. And we make it easy for you to find us at highland.org.
Highlands.org.
That's easy.
No, it's the easy.
Even I can remember
one
that.
of the easiest ones we've ever had. Nick doesn't even need to put that into the feed. Highlands.
But he will, I'm sure.
He will. But highlands.org. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
today,
Sarah. This has been amazing.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
So as we swap-a-roo on the desks here, a little shout out. We got some more people, great people watching the show today. Lee Elberson, thanks for watching today. Ginger Kamrath, Lily DeRay, thanks so much for watching today. Done a lot. Just been a fascinating look here.
Like I said, it's what's beautiful about that is that it makes you want to go back, right? I mean, I literally haven't been there for quite a
I think we went 2015.
Yeah, I think so. And that was the second time we went, but now it's like it must be completely different, and to go there knowing that history has changed to a certain respect, right? You went there thinking this was his house, right? And now you know it isn't, and it's nice to go back and say, let's see what the new stories are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, and the exhibits in there are fantastic. The stories that are told, the individuals who are there, both the gentleman, I wish I remembered their names, the gentleman at the visitor center and the young lady who was inside telling us they had so much knowledge. Yeah. And so just the people that worked there, that staff, Highland, are also just incredible because I learned so much. I mean, I learned things about Napoleon that I didn't even know beforehand. I was in James Monroe's house, and I came away with the complete history of Napoleon and Holland and all these things, and I said, this is fantastic.
Yeah, apparently Napoleon has a long history, huh? There's a lot of stories about Napoleon.
Okay. With him, but it's a lovely place. I definitely would encourage people to go check it out. Absolutely. And now, from one fantastic guest to another, we're really excited to welcome back a good friend of the program, Jeff Kamrath. He's the owner of Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
How you doing, Jeff?
Yeah, good.
So, first thing I hear congratulations, or in order, just the funny thing, I was remembering last time, I think it was the last time we had you on, you had your anniversary.
That was the first time.
That was the first time we had you on. And this time you have an upcoming anniversary, but for the business. So I'm just curious, what, as you approach such like a marker, like your 4-year anniversary of Aqua CVille Hand Wash, what sort of goes through your mind? I'm curious.
Oh man, there's a lot of thoughts. Well, thank you for having me.
We just want the good thoughts.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be 4 years on April 14th. We opened on a Saturday. It takes me back to every year I think about that date is how'd that first day go? There's so much planning that goes into getting the business to the point of opening. Sometimes you almost forget about that you have to then run the business after opening, right?
Yep.
So I remember I think we had done like some training the day before and washed a couple of cars, some family cars and some friends and family. And really it was just like, let's see what happens. We opened the gates. My brother was in town. I remember that. And there wasn't a whole big fanfare because part of it is kind of figuring out the last few bits. We didn't know which day we would pick to open, and we tried to choose a Saturday, but there wasn't a whole lot of social media, and we didn't have a lot of followers anyway. We had to earn all of our new customers. Started from 0 customers. And I remember Chris, who's now one of our managers, at the time was just a 19-year-old college student who was, picking up some extra work, working full-time and going to school full-time. And we just made him do laps around the block in his car just to turn into the parking lot to seem like we were busy, and then he'd pull in and be like, any cars coming? We're like, nope, go again. And so he would just go back around the block and go slower, slow down, coming down the street and create a traffic jam. And so, it was, and I don't even remember how many cars we watched that day. Maybe it was 20 and it seemed like 1,000. I don't know. It was a crazy time. And then just fast forward to, 4 years later, and things are different. Obviously, there's been so many changes in the world. I think everybody speaks to COVID the most, but there's it's wild, And now we're actually, it looks like right around the same time, and I don't know if it'll be the same date or not, but we'll open our second car wash in Zion Crossroads, which will be an express, which is a tunnel. It's just weird how those things work out. Yeah, it's true. And my wife, who's actually watching, she always likes to try to do spring break trips, and I'm always telling her it's tough at that time of the year. It's right before the pollen hits, so we're usually busy.
Yep. That's right.
It's spring break. People are trying to get out of town. It's always just tough to schedule and staff, so it's always kind of a trick. But it's an amazing thing to think about that it's been 4 years. It feels like it's been longer than that in some regards, and so it's been great. And the people of Charlottesville, the community has supported us unbelievably well. Through COVID, just from the start, we're having some of our our February was our best. Would have beat most of our months last year in general as a winter month.
Wow. As a winter month.
So that was great, and hopefully we can continue that going forward and keep growing the business. And, trying to keep bringing on new team members, which is always a challenge for us in any business nowadays, and get them trained up, and just so we can keep our service quality super high. We don't bat 1,000. I think I said this last time. We're not perfect, but we try to do the best we can. And, we do have great team members, and so that's always a trick to try to find those right people and then, get them trained up. So it's been great.
Exactly. What would you say is I'm sure weather has some impact on when people bring their cars, but what would you say is truly the busiest season for car washing?
Oh man, Virginia weather is so weird, so it's kind of
that's why I asked the question.
It can really vary. We can get some of our busiest days have been in the winter months when you get a really nice day, and it's kind of a rare, spring day in February when it's been snowing for a while, and then all of a sudden you get a 65-degree day on a Friday or Saturday. It can be crazy. Typically, you would say pollen season because you're coming out of winter, so a lot of people have maybe neglected to take care of their vehicles. They're now starting to think about, I'm going to be outside more, driving, days are longer, and then you get the pollen added onto it. It's summer typically slows down a little because so many people in Virginia tend to, take their vacations and have the means to get out of town. So it does slow down.
Thunderstorms, which help enormously.
Right, and that does slow us down a little, actually. And then fall does pick up when you get back into, UVA gets back into school, all the kids go back to school, all those summer trips, all the junk that is accumulated in the cars, all the parents, usually a lot of the moms are like, get this stuff out of my car. I'm ready to have a clean car again. So it's usually spring and fall, typically. But Christmas time, it's always really busy. People are ready to travel for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you want it to look a little nicer and things like that. So
that's interesting. Yeah, just the ebb and flow of it. Yeah, someone with allergies, the pollen season.
Oh, yeah. It must be amazing how many green cars walk, go in there in spring and they come out. It's like, wow.
I remember maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago. We had a really bad pollen season. I remember driving. I was going somewhere. I think I was picking up a washing machine or something that somebody was selling on Facebook or Craigslist. And I try to have a second hand because we go through them so fast. So I'm driving out out by Palmyra. And I remember just driving down the road, and you could just see the wind carrying the pollen across the road, and you're just like, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy!" And then you check the video cameras at the shop, and you see there's 40 cars in line. You're like, "Yeah, okay, people are trying to get this stuff off their cars."
This is great. Exactly. I love this pollen.
And then you get every now and then you get somebody like, "Well, my car's not clean because there's pollen on it." I'm like, well, yes, we just washed it, but we can't help nature.
Exactly.
The pollen just falls right back on your car. So
it's still falling.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It's funny that it coincides with the new car
It's
wash
weird,
coming
right?
up,
It's kind of eerie that way, I guess.
Yeah, it's a sign of, okay, the growth is happening. But I'm curious, one of the things that, because I know, having been to CIC workshops and just talking to a lot of small business owners, one of the hardest things I think that they approach is the question of growth, like expansion. Because you've got your little business, it starts doing well, and you sit there and say, okay, how do I approach opening a second location, getting bigger? How do I do that? So I'm curious how you approached it, what sort of led to this, and how you think of, how you realize, it's time to grow in this way.
Sure. I mean, great question. I didn't go into this business thinking we would only do one car wash, although I didn't have a time frame for when we would do more. Now, in full candor, I thought we would try to do more hand car washes. I thought that would be a market that we could apply in the Central Virginia area and other communities. What became a reality was the staffing challenges at the scale that we were going to need to operate just were not going to scale, and so we had to start exploring other, avenues. And then once we kind of hit on the idea of, okay, we know the model of business that we're going to need to maybe pivot to, which will be the express tunnel wash. Then it became about a timing issue, like to your point, and there's so many other factors included in it. So, I mean, you may be ready to expand your business from whatever KPIs that you're looking at. For instance, for me, it was more about the management of the business. Do I have the managers in place that can operate the business so that I can take a step back, so that I can, when I'm in the shop, I can do the high-level operations, payroll, cutting checks, making some supply orders, but is my general manager running the day-to-day? Can he do the payroll to the point where I just sign the checks? And my manager, can he run the site outside without me having to really get into the weeds? Customer resolution, things like that. So once you get to that point, then you still have to find the property, find the land, negotiate a lease or a sale of a property, find investors. It's not just an overnight thing. Just because you're ready to go doesn't mean you can just go. So it's really walking a fine line, which is we probably weren't ready to open. If we could have said, boom, car wash opens this day, management-wise, to do it, but kind of knowing it's going to take probably 2 years so it's like, okay, do I think in 2 years we'll be ready? And then what are the processes I can do? What are the main factors we have to address in those 2 years so that when opening day happens, you're ready to run it full time. Every business owner, I'm sure, goes through that, right? And so each industry is different. For our car wash in particular, I spent the first 2.5 years washing cars every day for a couple of reasons. I think I said this before. I had to know what was going on, know what I'm asking of my guys, know what the value is in the work, what's possible, so I'm not killing these guys. But then at a certain point, I had to start saying, yes, I could go help out, but what's that going to cost me and a business in the long run? And so sometimes it's really difficult to sit in my office when there's 30 cars in line and I'm watching the cameras and I'm like, I really want to go out there, but I have all this other work to do to prepare, and I've got to prioritize that. And I think you said it last time, the methods about the 4 boxes.
Yes.
I can't remember what that was called.
I forget what the name of it is called, but to be in that important but not urgent box.
Correct. And that's where business growth happens, right? And it's tricky. It's hard. And some days I just have to leave, and I'll just go work remotely. I'll either go home or I'll find a coffee shop or something where I can just not have the phone ringing, and just so I can sit down there and solve those tasks. And that's really challenging to do. And that's a skill that you have to develop over time. It's a muscle you have to exercise. Yeah. And I think we've hit the right threshold there, and hopefully, and then the real tricky part is going to be on the third one or the fourth one. It's like maybe you got 2 businesses that has to be in place for. So.
What does at some point, like, you're delegating, like you as the business owner, you manage, but you delegate tasks. But then as you go up to that higher level and you've got 2 or 3, you're delegating the management. So now you have managers of managers.
And it's empowering your managers and for them to trust themselves that you trust them. I mean, there's so much that you can tell them to their face and work with them, but until they really capture the idea that he trusts me. Whatever decisions I make, he's going to back or she's going to back. And that gives them the autonomy to then have much more decisive interactions, either with our customers or our staff. So, and our managers are great, but they're still learning too. Like it's new, it's different. Especially the youngest one, Chris. He's 22 years old. Like he's still. I speak to this all the time. He's almost one of my proudest guys in that, he never washed cars and was in school full time and still in school full time, works 4 days a week for us. And then obviously having Jared Stanley, who's our general manager, we couldn't do it without him, clearly. But Jared was an older guy, has a family, and he understood those responsibilities that we were asking him. But Chris had to go from, high school to college student to running a car wash. Wow. It's pretty cool. So
that's impressive.
We have a good team, and the trick is now how can they interact too with a growing business as well. So.
But now, I would imagine when you decided to open, or eventually you can open it in designs, you must have done that homework beforehand, because you got to open some in a particular spot where there's traffic, right? Sure. You're not going to open somewhere where it's nobody even knows you exist, right? So, did that come first? How did that come about?
So, in the car wash business, there are a couple of main manufacturers: Sonny's, McNeil. I think one's called Picos. In those huge manufacturing companies, they actually staff, data scientists and things like that create what they call these pro formas and these models that will tell you what a site should do from a revenue standpoint. Okay. And a lot of those are they put in demographic of the surrounding community, competition, but also physicality, locality. Where does your site sit? Is it at a light, near a light? Is it hard to get in and out of? How many vacuum bays does it have? How long is the tunnel? And then one of them is traffic count. And that's the biggest driver for most of them, because ultimately, they have figured out in their modeling that on most roads, and speed, speed of traffic, how fast they're going is an issue. What population centers are you in? Residential? Are you in commercial? Are you in throughput? But traffic count goes back to one of the main indicators. The trick on traffic count, and the reason it gives traffic count is it's an objective number. The state will run, VDOT will run traffic count numbers for every section of road in the state that the state maintains every year. They do. So you remember that, those little strips of
yes,
roll over?
Yeah,
those are traffic count. Yeah. They're counting. So you can go access this data. It's public data online. And so I can then go look at one street and a cross street and see how much traffic is going by that intersection every day. And objectively, you can kind of get a sense of what the business will do. And because there's so much private equity money coming into the car wash world, a lot of these guys are sitting in New York or San Francisco or Chicago or wherever that are looking at these data points will just say, we only want the highest, traffic count areas, because they're just trying to make smart bets with their money remotely, which is fine. As a small business owner that doesn't have access to as much capital, you have to be smarter about it. And you're not going to be able to compete bidding for some of those properties. So then we have to go start looking for some of the gaps. And one of the gaps we found was in Zion Crossroads, where the traffic count on paper doesn't show as high. But if you go drive through Zion's, you'll know. You've been out there. Every 2 cars that goes through that intersection goes into the Walmart, the Lowe's, the Sheetz, the New Checkers, the Arby's, and all the shopping centers right there, or right across the street where there's a new 7-Eleven, there's a Starbucks there. So that one section just captures at a much higher rate. So what we had to go through and do is say, okay, here is a traffic count, but we think the capture rate is going to be this much higher. Right. And we did that through actually anecdotal evidence. I went out and sat in parking lots with clickers and started counting cars. Wow. So I could start seeing in an hour stretch and extrapolate that over a whole day. If there are, X number of cars in that shopping center, there was 10%, 12%, 50%. It's more than that actually in that shopping center. Whereas on any given day going down 29, each individual shopping center may only get like 1% or 0.5%. In Zion Crossroads, it's like boom, much higher. So, and then how can we go find more of those little places that nobody is going to think to look at? And that's what we're targeting and trying to do. So my business partner, who's been great. He's one of our customers at the current car wash, is basically task made for finding more places like that. And so you have to be local to know that. You're just never going to figure it out otherwise. So that's the uncommon advantage that we're going to have. But that advantage only extends so far into the locality of Central Virginia. Otherwise, I mean, I can't go down to Raleigh, North Carolina and do that today. I don't have that experience. Exactly. So
it's also I think the interesting part about being a small business is that if you use your entrepreneurship right, you use the advantages that you have correctly, you can find those niches and say, okay, yes, I can't compete in scale if you're a small store. I'm not going to compete in scale with Walmart.
Right.
But I can have knowledge, anecdotal, of the community that Walmart will never have.
Sure.
And I can therefore find those niches and capture those customers.
And you can also leverage some of the bigger relationships like Walmart and Sheetz and Lowe's, the big box stores that went in there obviously saw something ahead of time to go develop and work with the developer to put a store there. So they had done some of the research already, but they're an attractor, right? They're a captured area where people are going to go shop there, and they know that. So they can kind of create some of their own industry.
They can create flow.
Right,
Exactly.
correct. And so you can leverage that to kind of go figure out where they're going. And when you start to see hubs of these couple of businesses that'll go together, that's kind of an indicator. But, Walmart's been there for 15 years. So was that location ready for a car wash 15 years ago? No. Right? Because the capture rate wasn't there into that shopping center, but it's gotten bigger and higher. And then Spring Creek developing right there and all the communities coming to it. I mean, there's going to be 25 new rooftops coming just behind Lowe's at some point with a new development. So just looking at all the community development plans that you get to see.
Yeah, just thinking ahead and being flexible in that way.
And what I was going to say is when you mentioned about the small entrepreneur, and that's the one advantage over the private equity guys, right? Because they're like, you're right, they're sitting out there saying, I'm just going to put my money, but I'm just looking at numbers, right? Where basically Jeff's saying, yeah, these numbers are important. However, when you can take a look at an area and say, yeah, the numbers don't look good, but the rate where people are actually driving into this particular area is better than the numbers indicate.
And then you have to make smart decisions. I mean, a lot of private equity places, they'll spend $4 or $5, $6 million on a car wash because their numbers support it. Where, okay, we're taking a little bit more risk, knowing that the traffic count may not be the exact same. But so you pare down what you're going to develop. You don't need to build the Taj Mahal of car washes. It just needs to do the best car wash around. That's what it really matters. So that's what we're focused on.
Quality.
Yep.
Exactly.
We got some more viewers today. We got Elizabeth Lamarche watching, Kari Ritter watching, Matthias Yon. Actually, Matthias Yon asks a question. He says, are you considering opening on Sundays, which happens to be his car wash day?
Matthias, the Zion Crossroads location will be open 7 days a week. And not 365 a year. Obviously, we'll have our staff give regular holidays off. At the Aqua location in Charlottesville, we originally were open 7 days a week, and it wasn't sustainable for my family, for our relationship with my wife and my kids, for that of my employees as well, unless I was to go hire another 6 to 8 full-time staff and probably another 1 or 2 managers, and we just couldn't support that at the time. So we made the decision to go to 6 days a week. Part of that was supported by our traffic count on Sundays was just not that great. There's still a huge church community in Charlottesville, which is great. We love going to church as well. And so that meant that most of our business was focused afternoon and about like a 4-hour window. And then really does it start to make sense to be open. And so we made that choice, and our quality of life for our entire staff has gotten better.
Yeah.
And there's not really a price you can put on it. And I probably would have lost both, if not both of my managers, at least one of them. I think just long term because work-life balance just wasn't going to be there, and I do think we're burning our guys out, and so the quality of product and service they can put out is going to suffer as well. So if you can be on 6 days a week with better service, and all the Sunday customers have been trained now over a couple of years to come on the other days, I just feel like it's a better product long term. Now with the new tunnel, obviously, the machine just shows up to work every day. You just turn on the switch. So we'll keep that open 7 days a week, and part of it is we're going to have to, just for a competition standpoint. But yeah, my brother's car wash in Houston 7 days a week, and they don't have a problem with it, and their staff is fine. But it's just.
But I love that answer because it does. There's like one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is that you can make those important work-life decisions and say, you know what, this is better for us work-life balance-wise. It's better for my family. It's better for all this, which then makes the business better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best decision that we ever made. It was a hard decision to make because we didn't know what it was going to cost us, and I'm so glad we did it. Even during COVID, actually, we closed on Mondays too. We were open only 5 days a week. We did Tuesday through Saturday, and we really debated doing that model and picking a different day to be closed. I don't think it makes sense for us long term because obviously, as we're growing, we need to have the 6 days of business. But it kind of puts you into the mindset of like, what are other decisions that are kind of scary to make that we maybe should be thinking more about?
Exactly.
You don't want to make too many of them because you want to have slow and incremental change that kind of accumulates over time. But those decisions exist. I would say the second decision behind that is we went to appointments only on Mondays and Tuesdays. And that really supports our membership base because they feel like we're not going to take just a lot of walk-ins. Mm-hmm. So one thing we've been batting around is, do we expand that option into more days? Do we add a Monday through Wednesdays appointments, Monday through Thursdays? Or we don't know yet. We haven't really gotten too serious about it, but we've had those conversations. Like, what are those types of decisions to make? And can we train our community to use that system like that? Because I know of other car washes who've done that and really struggled. So
interesting. So many things to think about.
Every business has their decisions that they have to make and think about and ramifications.
You said Katie Ritter was listening. Mm-hmm. I think
Kari Ritter.
Oh, Kari Ritter. Okay. Well, we know a family called the Ritters who are one of the Chick-fil-A proprietors, and that kind of brought me back to it. If Chick-fil-A can figure out a way to do it, I figure a hand car wash could probably figure out a way to be close.
Exactly. Had Chick-fil-A, I'll never forget when I saw the news that Chick-fil-A somebody in Atlanta bought a Chick-fil-A location inside the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Which is a football
stadium. And they're, of course, they're not open on Sundays.
They're not allowed to be open on Sundays.
And so I said, what kind of interesting entrepreneurship, what went on in those discussions? Say, here's things we can do with this. When during the biggest days of this stadium, we will be closed.
I remember hearing about that, and I wonder what they went with. I mean, obviously there's concerts and there's other events going on. I wonder if they do a lot more of the takeout service during the week.
That's the only thing I think of. Just interesting, though, because you would sit there and say, impossible. Why would a Chick-fil-A pay that money for a spot in a football stadium? But someone...
Do colleges play there?
Yeah, concerts. That's what it is. I think a lot of concerts in non-Sunday.
No, I'm saying the college. Is there college?
No, there's not. It's not a college home stadium, but they do have a lot of. You'll do like they do the season kickoff. Will be, I think, at that stadium. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they almost always have a playoff game or a bowl game, if not one of the major bowl games, Peach Bowl and national championship stuff. So
exactly. So just the foresight to be like, wait. Maybe this isn't as impossible as I thought it was. It's a tough decision, but
those decisions in reality don't hurt. I remember once we were out, and I know we dropped your mother off at a particular store, and Michael and I were looking for a place to eat, and I said, they said, let's go to the Chick-fil-A. There's one here, and we drive up, it's closed, right, because it was a Sunday. And at first it's like, oh, God. But then I said, that's fine. I mean, I like that, right? Because, let's face it. Sundays I don't work, so why should anybody else truly work? And if that's the decision to make, then that's fine.
Yeah. Half the time we take road trips, we plan our travel not to be on Sunday when we come home, so that we plan out where the Chick-fil-A is because that's the kids love them and they go play. Speaking of sports, though, how about the baseball team?
Baseball team. I wanted to ask you about that.
I know you guys love baseball.
I love baseball.
I can talk it all day.
They started 8-0, and I'm just thinking back because last year. College World Series out of nowhere, and we got close. We were close to championship.
That game was
a
killer.
So, just what are you thinking when you look at the team this year? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the team this year?
We need fans. Yeah. Well, February is always tough in any sport outdoors. The weather's been great, though. I'd say we were there. My family and I were there Friday, or at least I was there Friday, and we all went Sunday. And the fans are showing up pretty decent. The stadium's so big now that it seems empty sometimes.
That's what it is.
That's a trick. I'd say there were probably 1,200 fans or so, maybe 1,500. teams, I mean, you got to give them credit. They did what they're supposed. They took care of business against Cornell and William & Mary. Cornell hadn't played in 2 years with COVID, and it showed. You felt bad.
You felt bad.
You felt bad,
It's very lopsided.
but at least we did our part. Sometimes you can tend to play down to the opponent. I remember we played a game against Quinnipiac when I was playing here, and they were a midweek team, hadn't played outside, I think, and they came down here on a road trip, and we were up by 9 or 10 runs in the 6th inning and lost. That was a bad loss.
I would think so.
You got to take care of the games you're supposed to take care of. What's encouraging to see is our bats right now. That's always kind of been a struggle in February and March when it's so cold. It's tough on hitters, and we're lights out with the bats right now. And I don't know how much of that is. Obviously we have some talented players. I don't know how much of that is the competition. The weather is nicer. Look, you're going to find out really quickly. I mean, you get a Big Ten opponent coming in, Penn State, which is still a northern school, and then you start going to ACC play pretty soon. You're going to find out really quick if that's legitimate. I think it is. Seeing some of the balls where Jake Geloff's hitting them right now. I mean, he's hit 2 balls that I saw that went over that Ledford clubhouse in left field.
Which is a long
If
way.
you just move the monster a little bit, I think he's clearing the monster with some of those moon shots. And then he hit a couple on top, and he was 9 for 10, hit for the cycle, was a homer short of the cycle against William & Mary.
No.
Who would have?
And he started that even last year.
Right, and he switched positions. He went from first base to third base, taking his brother's position. There's a lot going on in that conversation. And then Kyle Teal, he goes back behind the dish, so he's changing positions midseason. He changed positions the outfield last year. He hit a ball out of the stadium to right field. And then you've got some of these younger guys, Saki and the kid Anderson yesterday hit a home run off the batters. We're putting the ball out of the park, which is really exciting to see. But then again, let's see what happens when some guys start pumping 95, 96 at you. We'll see.
Tougher.
So I want to kind of, tamp the brakes on my enthusiasm. I'm really excited. The pitching staff has done a great. They've been doing shutout after shutout after shutout. I'm really excited. We haven't seen Matt Wyatt a whole lot. I wonder if they're just resting him. He threw a lot last year late. Played all summer with USA.
That's right.
Yep.
Maybe they're just watching his innings. I'm excited to see him, but Neek has done well. Ortiz coming off the injury, and now he's pitching. It's exciting to see. And some of these young guys, need to get some of these innings, to get some of the jitters out.
I like that we are returning a good deal of the talent that took us as far as we went last year, and now has the added experience of having been in that.
Well, Teal and Geloff are second years, so that's a big deal. And Newell is a junior, and I think he had a little stumble and a little pinch. He played it against William & Mary too. So I think those guys. You're going to have games where the younger guys are going to struggle because they're young, and those veterans are going to have to step up and carry in a couple of games. So that'll be interesting to see happen. But it's been exciting so far.
It is.
That really is.
And contrast that against Major League Baseball, which is having a zoo right now. College baseball is having. How about the kid from NC State, Tommy Tanks? Have you seen this?
No, I have
No.
not.
His first 8 games, he's hit 9 home runs. He hit 5 home runs in the first weekend series.
Oh my goodness.
Literally, he's getting tweets from Major League players like, "Bro, can we?" Trey Turner tweeted at him like, "Yo, I need to learn how to hit this 1 home run a game kind of situation. Can we?" College baseball is going to be the biggest beneficiary out of this Major League kind of situation.
Because that is the spring. Baseball operates in that little spring
short window.
It's a very short window.
That window basically between the end of the NFL season and the NFL draft is that window. And if that window can be taken by college baseball, I think it can go a long way.
Yeah, it'd be exciting for the sport and sad for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, sad for MLB, but it's...
You guys being Yankee fans, I know.
Ask my brother Michael about the Yankees right now, and he's not too pleased because he's sitting there saying we tend to look at them, and you see what's kind of sad is that one of the reasons I love college sports so much is you see MLB, and it's hard to look beyond Yankee ownership and say how much do they really want to win?
Yeah.
Versus how much do you want to get a lot of revenue?
Right.
And if you don't win the World Series, no big deal. We got some playoff games. We made some money.
Right.
We're good. And contrasted with that being the beauty of college sports is that those kids have a 4-year window
Yep.
to win a college championship.
Even less.
And they put it all on.
Well,
the
and
line.
now you start to see it too with college baseball, the NIL situation going on. I think college baseball has a unique opportunity to basically be better than the minor leagues because the minors, you obviously don't get paid very much in the minors. Obviously, you're affiliated with a team, a chance to obviously progress. Some of these players come out of high school may start choosing to stay in college a little longer because they can earn more money with an NIL deal or multiple deals. Let's say you're a kid at UT, Texas, and you're their best player, their best pitcher. You may earn $100,000+, theoretically, of course, and you're never going to make that in the minors. Now, you could get a signing bonus if you're really good and go on, but you're going to start getting some of these college players. I think the quality of college baseball has a chance to take a massive leap forward, especially at kind of some of the mid-level schools, northern schools that are willing to invest in some of their players or have these collective. I don't know if you've seen anything about these sports collectives that are coming out. The SEC, like there's a collective called like the Gator Collective and these other sports collectives. They're really focused on baseball and basketball, but other big sports, and baseball is another sport that's kind of, I think, has an opportunity to take advantage of these conversations.
Or I think just people know their college team more. Let's face it, the minor leagues is almost completely unknown. I couldn't even, the only minor league team that I used to be able to name for you was the Staten Island Yankees. And it's only because it was like the Yankee minor league. You played in Staten Island?
Yeah, I didn't play for them. I played in that stadium, yeah.
Nice. And so, I mean, that's literally the only one that I know of.
Brooklyn Cyclones.
Brooklyn Cyclones, wow.
That's a good one.
That one I don't even remember.
Well, the Yankees
right
they used to have the one down here in Virginia, right?
They did.
Past Roanoke, right next to Roanoke. I forget the name.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But they've lost a lot of those rookie level teams, and
Some of them.
I think some of that's for the betterment. I mean, when I was playing, there were 6-7 teams in a minor league organization, and 2-3 guys were guys. So everybody else is a role filler, and we know it. Well, I mean, if you condense some of those teams, maybe you can pay those guys a little better. Maybe you can supply better living conditions and off-season programming. I mean, minor leaguers still don't get paid in spring training.
No, I know. It's
That's, to me, asinine. If you're trying to develop major league talent and you're not willing to pay your players during spring training, figure out a way to pay them in the off-season so they don't have to go bag groceries all day long and then work out at 10 o'clock at night, with not having great, maybe dietary options and nutritional supplements. How is that guy supposed to develop into a professional baseball player or a major league caliber player? Now, the true sense of the story is they're not. That's where the bonus money goes for the guys who are guys.
Yeah.
So, and it's like an open secret. So I'd like to see Major League Baseball. And honestly, some of the mid-market teams, I'm surprised haven't done more of this because I feel like there'd be a competitive advantage like the Oakland A's started doing it where they were paying for their minor leaguers in season to live and have the housing arrangements. Like that's a better. They're going to get more out of their younger players, and their younger players are cheaper if they get to the big league. So why not invest like that? So I think some of this collective bargaining stuff is maybe get worked out a little bit, and I really do feel like guys like Max Scherzer and Andrew Miller, who are kind of negotiating for the Players Association, really have the best interest of the young players at heart.
This is
which
one of
unique.
those years where I think the MLB Players Association is willing to do more. I've seen in their negotiations an actual concern for the minor leaguers as opposed to
or the young major leaguers,
or the young major leaguers. But I think, like you said, I mean, one of the things for me is that if particularly since the minor leagues aren't as well known as your alma mater, as colleges, I think there's going to be a big incentive to say, you know what, why don't I go to a college school? Right. And that NIL means that I can actually make a decent, significant living there if I'm really good because of the publicity that goes into especially some of these big college baseball schools.
And now there's some, I think it's called the Alford rule, where NCAA schools can now tie $6,000 a year to student athletes through some eligibility standard. They can pay their student athletes up to $6,000. Now the school has to decide to do it, and the student athlete has a responsibility to meet the eligibility requirements that each school sets. But so now you're talking about each athlete could theoretically, if the school would budget and allow for it, the SEC schools are all doing this, by the way. They may only be doing it in football and basketball, but a lot of them are doing it for all sports, and so they're paying athletes $6,000 for certain eligibility requirements. why would you not think about going to school now? And that money is, I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe is not taxed as income because it's through their,
it might be,
but NIL money would be because it'd be separate from the university. So it's really interesting kind of how this is playing out. I don't necessarily love it in college sports, but okay, let's look at where are the benefits. It's going to stay. It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
So
That's right.
how do you leverage this to make the sports world better at college? And I think colleges can really jump on this and say, we're going to have a great experience for student athletes. We're going to retain some of the best athletes in the state. We can get them to come here, support our university, make money for our university, obviously, that's important, and then represent our university. And, oh, guess what? They'll stay here for more than just one and done in some instances,
Exactly.
or a couple of years and get out. So,
You know that. I mean, think about it. I mean, not every single player gets to go to whether it be the NFL, the NBA, or the MLB, right? To have a little bit of education is not a bad thing either.
well, and I look at it like this. What schools are going to start putting in these sports marketing programs for undergraduate degrees? Because you can then now tie it to, let's train you. You're an athlete. You understand this NIL stuff. You understand how the marketing system agencies work. You're working with them independently of the school to earn revenues and income. Why not create these sports market? And obviously there are certain schools that do this already, but you may see more schools kind of jump into this and be like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to leverage your sports experience for a career long term if that's something of interest, which I promise you to most athletes it is.
Sure.
They just don't exist at all the schools. I would have done that at UVA. That doesn't exist. So I did government, which is another story. There's so many athletes that would love to jump on opportunities like that.
Exactly.
He had to introduce the athletes to the world of entrepreneurship that surrounds sports.
Exactly.
Because there's so much that surrounds sports beyond playing the game itself.
100%.
That you can then have a career in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jeff, it's always such a pleasure.
Fun.
Absolutely.
I always
It's
love
a lot of
having
fun.
you on. I always have
Enjoyable.
a fun time.
Yeah.
So be sure to please go and support the UVA baseball team. We need
UVA baseball.
fans.
Come to the games
And
this
it's-
weekend. Be
it's-
loud.
It's like
Be respectful,
I
but be
feel like
loud.
it's the best deal at UVA. I mean,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
$5 to get in the gate.
$5 you get in a game and you get to watch a baseball.
They sell beer too now.
You have beer now. The hot dogs are always good.
Hot dogs are great. Sit on the hill, sit in the sun.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be 70 on Friday.
Oh, it is so beautiful. And for me personally, not that I don't watch baseball on TV, baseball in person is a completely
can't be
different.
beat.
It can't be
You
beat.
can't
College
beat it.
baseball and how close you can get to the action.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's, in my mind, it's the best sports experience for your money.
Yeah.
Bar
No
none.
doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not to say other sports experiences aren't great, but as a
you pay more for
baseball
that.
guy, I mean, you could go into the lacrosse games and get in for the same amount and have a great experience at the lacrosse game, but it's something about baseball in the spring, the grass starts turning green,
Yep.
the days get longer, you start playing those songs in batting practice, center field and put me in, those are the baseball songs that
It
you almost want
energizes
to
you.
wish you had a Superman shirt on and just open it up and be like, God, I feel like I could take on the world right
Absolutely.
And it's the one sport, I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I go to watch a baseball game in person, it's the one sport that when you're there in person, it feels like a game. Like it feels like you're there to have fun. It's not this curated super serious, like on TV, the pitcher and the batter. Like you watch it and you're like, this
And it goes
like a game.
and
And it goes by so fast.
fast, right? It's like I know every time we go watch a Yankee
What?
game or even a UVA game, it just feels like you go. There's like the game's over.
Have you
It's like,
seen this now? The pitchers and the catchers wear they have
because-
a watch
yeah.
that they wear, which I'm not a traditionalist, but because of that, the games. I mean, literally, the pitcher gets on the mound, he gets his sign from the shortstop if there's a runner on base, and then it's boom, fastball outside, and it's just bang bang, and the speed of the game is so much quicker. I mean, most of these games are getting played in 2 hours 15 minutes, we watch a Yankee Red Sox game, it's gonna be 4 hours.
It's going to be 4 hours.
Yeah.
But when you're there, it never feels as long.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
Never
that way,
feels
yeah.
as long.
Yeah.
You know what I always think of is, I think of going to the Astrodome with my dad or my grandma, who took me quite a bit, or my mom. But mostly, it just takes you back to those moments. Then you sit there with your kids, and you're like, I really hope these memories are imprinting on you the same way they did on me, because they're going to be really special one day. And college baseball is like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So I hope everybody goes. By the way, Coach O'Connor is giving away tickets on his Twitter account.
Yeah.
So
Free
free tickets.
Whoa.
If you go on his Twitter account and message him what days you're going to want to go to the game, you cannot be between 8th and 12th grades as a student because there's some NCAA rules, but you can be a parent of that person. He'll give you 2 tickets, and he'll just send them to you as a link, and you can go to any game you want this week. And you can go to multiple games if you want.
Wow.
So go to Coach O'Connor.
That's so nice.
I'll have to look it up, but I think it's UVA Coach O'Connor maybe, or Jerry's going to get the link up. But if
at
you
UVA Coach O'Connor.
At UVA Coach O'Connor on Twitter, and he will send you, or whoever's running his Twitter account during games will send you 2 tickets. Maybe it's Cindy. I don't know. And they're giving free tickets. They just want people to show up to the games.
Yeah, exactly, to support it.
And he wants you to wear orange, I think. And
that's easy.
Send a pic. Hashtag Coach O'Connor.
There you go. I mean, if you should have a UVA shirt already, so I mean, you should be set.
Absolutely.
And spring and orange go perfect, right?
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
Exactly. Love it. Jeff, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
AquaCVille.com.
AquaCVille.com. I did forget to ask, where can people find you? AquaCVille.com. I think Nick's going to put that in the feed.
Book your appointments, AquaCVille.com.
AquaCVille.com. Thanks, Jeff.
Before or after the game, doesn't matter.
Before or after the game,
That's right.
Before.
There you go.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jeff, for coming on.
Terrific. That was a lot of fun.
I always have a blast.
Yeah.
When Jeff comes on, talking about things we love.
And talking about baseball, that's always that's just
you can't have
baseball and spring and summer is wow. It just feels so good. It feels so good, and
it really is.
It's true. You got to go to the UVA baseball games.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
It's
a great family.
It is.
You know, for young kids like yourselves too. You take all your friends. You go over there and have a good time, and the families. It's great.
There's not too many places you didn't have a fantastic time for $5.
And outdoors.
Fantastic outdoor
Bring
time
that
for
fresh
$5.
air.
Exactly.
Breathe in all that pollen too. Perfect for you.
I'll take it in
Of course.
And then deal with it later. But I know, so last segment of the show, of course, we got our finance segment. I mean,
well, it was
you had one tip.
No, just one little quick thing.
A little quick thing you wanted to talk to the audience about.
Yeah, because I know that, the markets have been extremely volatile over the last few weeks. Really last week. And one of the things that I had read that if you look back in history, anytime you have these type of events, usually meaning, events that are war related or short term, geopolitical conflicts. Historically, the markets, the S&P 500, for example, within a few weeks go down about 5%, and then eventually, within 47 days after that, they come back to where the markets were, so to the previous level of the market. Interesting enough here, and I would say it's good enough. It's good to know history, right? But you also have to recognize that history doesn't always necessarily repeat itself in the same way, right? And if you look at what's happened here, right? If you look at the time so the market year to date, the S&P is down about 7.8%, almost 8%, right? The rest of the market's more or less the same. I think it's the growth market's down about 12%. But if you look at the time when the war in Ukraine started to today, to as of last night, most markets were up 2 or 3%. So you say, wait a minute, so here you have an event, and given that event, you would expect the market to go down about 5%, but it isn't. It's up about 2 or 3%. And you say to yourself, well, why did that happen? And it's because there's something else going on also on the sidelines that you have to think about, and that is that we came into this year recognizing that the Federal Reserve had said, all right, we're taking off, we're tapering, meaning we're buying less and less bonds,
free money in the system.
So less free money in the system. We're also going to raise rates because inflation's gotten out of control and we need to take care of that. And 3, we're even thinking about selling bonds, which means that they're going to take money out of the system, right? So all that makes the market very nervous. So what happens? We have an event that is a war-like event, and when that happens, typically central banks start to ease, right? So you have a situation here where everybody said, wait a minute, so if this is the case, and even Powell said this yesterday, I know we're going to have to think a little bit about how quickly and how much we raise rates. And he almost literally said, we're just going to do a 25 basis point increase the first time, when most people are saying they might do a 50 because inflation's so bad.
Exactly. So now it's like shaving 25. It's basically shaving 25
Exactly.
basis points off the expectation.
So the market said, okay, so the Fed's not going to tighten as hard and as quickly as we thought. Therefore, we're still going to have that free money in the system, and the market rallies. So again, history is important.
The absurd bad news is good news.
Exactly. But my point being is that it's much more important to know where you're going, what your goals are, and creating that portfolio than trying to market. And even if you say, well, historically, this is what happened, therefore, oh boy,
not a guarantee.
Here's a war, let me sell, and then I'll buy it back, in a few weeks. No, there's no guarantees, right? So market timing is gambling, right? And if you want to gamble, I always say, take your $10, go buy a lotto, and boy, you're going to make a lot more money if you're right,
Exactly.
than trying to gamble in this market.
You might have better expected value from a lotto.
Absolutely.
A lotto ticket.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's important advice for people to know, to think about that. Like you said, history repeats itself, but not in the exact same way.
Exactly, yeah.
And you just need to be
You have to be
prepared for
cognizant, you have to look at it. And, that doesn't mean, we've spent literally the last couple of months looking at opportunities, what's going to happen, what are some of the sectors we want to be in, and we've discussed it
doesn't
here.
mean you don't make tactical decisions.
Absolutely. So we've made tactical decisions based on what we expect to happen over the next 12 to 24 months, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you want your financial advisor to be thinking about and say, we're not restructuring the entire portfolio, but tactically, we think that this is a better decision. Maybe it'll be a little less risky.
The difference is you're not trying to say he's trying to make a quit button in 5 days.
No, exactly.
You're making longer-term tactical
That's right.
decisions. No, great advice.
That was my 2 cents worth.
Your 2 cents for today. That's worth a little more than
Absolutely.
2 cents. So just a little bit more than 2
It's a
cents.
number. It's a saying, right? 2 cents worth.
I know.
I didn't make that up.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Kylie Tallender Meisler, Hannah Tindall, thanks for watching the show today. We're still getting some great viewers. Definitely
Wonderful.
appreciate everyone who tuned in this morning. Fantastic show.
Oh, yes,
I feel like
this is good.
I learned so much and then just had a wonderful time.
We had a history lesson, right?
Had some history, some
And some
archaeology, some
entrepreneurship
baseball, some
from Jeff. How he thinks about his particular business, and it's true.
There's a lot to take away for your own business as
Absolutely. Every business is different, but in the end, when you're growing your business, there's a lot of decision that go into that, and you have to think of all the ramifications and
Exactly.
where
And
are
great
we? What's the
advice
next
there.
step? Yeah.
Absolutely. And next week's going to be fun as well. We're going to have Nikki from Millhouse Spa at the Inn at Willow Grove.
Okay.
As well as Courtney Tatashin, the executive director of the Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay.
So a little spa, inn, tourism,
Yes.
a little retail hospitality coming up.
Bring in
I Love
tourism,
CVille, which
isn't
I think Jerry's talked about it on I Love CVille
Yes.
flagship show that, where people are going out more, people are ready to be done with staying home. And
Oh, absolutely.
they're ready to go and actually get back to enjoying life.
It's
And
ti-
I think
it's
this
time
is
to
one of
live
the
again.
ways- It's time to live
Time
again.
to live again, yes.
Time to live again. So we're happy to.
And we're welcoming all the tourists that want to come to Charlesville.
Exactly. As Jerry says, they come, they support our economy.
That's
they go
right.
home.
What better than that?
What better than that?
And then we can reduce real estate taxes.
Oh, let's not go there. Amen to that, but let's not go there. Otherwise, we'll be here for another half an hour, and everybody's
That's
gonna be
right.
like, guys.
Jerry will jump in on that one, I'm sure.
It's true to be one continuous show, 3 hours worth. But I always appreciate being here with you.
Oh, I love being here with you also. Thank you.
Always appreciate Judah behind the camera, making us look good, moving all the different parts. I always appreciate our partners, the Gym CVille, Vitae Spirits, Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash, aquaciville.com. As Jeff rightly pointed out, be sure to make your appointments there as we get into the spring pollen season.
Yes.
Serious Craddock Insurance, our friends at Castle Hill Cider, and at GBS Financial Services. Johan told us he's very busy right now.
Oh, absolutely,
As tax
yeah,
season is
yeah.
here, but he is the man to talk to.
That's the man you have to go to. That's
That is
right.
the
You got
man you
any
gotta
tax
speak to.
issues, go see Johan.
see our friend
Maybe he
Johan.
won't answer the phone right now because I'm sure he's very busy, but I'm sure he'll get back to you.
But if you're not talking to him now, you should have been.
That's right.
There you go. And just always appreciate, of course, we're presented by Emergent Financial Services. So we're always with Forward Adelante, Latino networking group here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We always appreciate you, our audience, for just tuning in, for your questions. Thanks for asking us. Thanks, Matthias, for asking a question, and Jeff here, getting some more knowledge there on
Yes.
just how operation works. experts. Appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll be sure to see you next week. But until that time, hasta mañana.